Are we up? Yep, we're up. Okay. We are up and live.
Okay, I guess we don't have no minutes to approve. Do we need to do attendance, or you're just doing that by video, Jay?
I'm comfortable doing it by video.
Yeah.
Jamel's taking notes for us this morning.
Great.
Actually, Dave, one thing I did notice I probably should have added to the agenda is it maybe just a quick round of introductions. Like I was saying, we have at least 3 new faces. So I don't know how folks feel about that. Oh, and speaking of faces, let me get myself up. So I don't know how folks feel about that, but maybe that'd be a good way to start the morning.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Great. Would you like me to try to go just around how I see people on my video, or do you want to do that, Dave?
Go ahead, Jay.
All right. So I think folks know me. You've seen my plenty of emails from me this week. Don't worry, to the new folks. Usually it's not that this document heavy, but for the next couple of meetings, it probably will be. I'm Jay Chase. I am the planning director. And with Karen and Jamel, who introduce themselves in a moment, we are your staff liaisons. As I see it, I'm going to have Dave. You want to introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, yeah, Dave Merrill, 20-year resident. I am the chairman of this committee at the moment, and have been involved with either comprehensive plan, comprehensive implementation, or long-range planning in one form or another since 2004 or 5, somewhere in that neighborhood. So come from the construction and architecture end of the world, and just want to try to help the community grow in as wise a way as possible with that background.
Jay, you're on mute.
Yes, I am. I just know I went around and muted folks. I was getting a little feedback when Dave was speaking. So, Don.
So I'm Don Hamel. I'm a town councilor and have been on the council since 2018. I'm the alternate liaison from the town council to long range planning committee, and Gene, you know, I attend many of these meetings additionally, but here today, you know, instead of Jean Marie, and you know, look forward to working with all of you, you know, continuing members and leadership and new members. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Rachel?
There we go. Hi, I'm Rachel Hendrickson. I am the new liaison from the planning board. I think I've been on the planning board 5 years now. This is my first meeting of the long range planning committee. I'm replacing Robin Saunders. I am also on the conservation commission in town, so I bring a couple of perspectives to this committee. I've lived in Scarborough since 2011. So I'm looking forward to the work we do and the work you folks have done so far. It's right now it's a little overwhelming. All of the groundwork that you've been laying for the comp plan. So I look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Rachel. Corey?
Morning, everybody. I'm Corey Fellows. I served on the planning board for about 12 years. Been off for a couple of years now. Don't remember how many years I've been on LRPC, but it's been several now. I had the opportunity to have some involvement in sort of the tail end of the implementation of the prior version of the comp plan. And it's been exciting to be a part of this process from the start. Look forward to working with everybody and kind of finalizing this, helping to implement it, and moving on to other challenges as well.
Thanks, Corey. Marvin?
Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Everybody hear me? All right. Okay.
Yes.
Marvin Gates. I live on Black Point Road. Have been a resident since 2016. My wife and I built the place. And I'm one of those people who came here as a child to spend the summers with my grandparents. Went away at about age 12 and came back at about age, I don't know, 55 or something like that. Visited in between, sort of a long-standing love of the place that you establish as a child. I have, I suppose, listening to the videos of former meetings and catching up to speed, I agree with Rachel enormously. It's overwhelming. I would describe myself as new blood, and I hopefully have done my homework. I know a few of you from having appeared before as a commenter, public person at the planning board, and have worked a little bit with the town on projects such as the cell tower at the sanitary district, etc. Very pleased to be here and hope I can contribute in some way. Thanks.
Thanks, Marvin. Rick? You're muted, just so you know.
Here we go.
Yep.
Rick Schene. I've lived in Scarborough since 1994. I'm an attorney, practice with Drummond Woodson in Portland, primarily in the real estate area. Have served on a number of committees in town. Most notably chaired the 2006 Comprehensive Plan Update Committee and became a member of what was then the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee, which has morphed into this committee. So I guess I've been on this committee since 2006. I've also been on the planning board and for a time chaired that board and have served on a number of other town committees and currently serve as president of the Land Trust.
Thank
And
you,
recently a new grandfather.
Very good. Thanks.
Very good.
Peter?
Hi there. Yes, my name is Peter Freilinger. I'm a consultant in the banking industry and a single father who lives off of Pine Point Road in the lower southern corner of the town. I moved here in 2018, actually, yes, 2017. Although I was sort of similar to Marvin. I was born and raised in Cape Elizabeth and graduated there in '91. Moved away, and in the intervening years, my parents moved back to Scarborough in 1997 and lived off of the Eastern Road. And my sister moved back here in 2010, and she lives just off of Black Point Road. So the whole family is here in town, and we talk a lot about the growth the town has seen in the last 20 years or so, and the challenges it faces. And we have different perspectives, from me as a parent to my parents as older people who are increasingly worried about transportation and getting to places like Maine Med and the like. And so hopefully I can add that diverse perspective from my family, but also the perspective of living in and working around the world. I for the 25 years I was away, I worked in places like Seattle and London and New York. So a very different type of perspective from that as well. So, but looking forward to participating in this, and have always had a fascination with planning issues and urban and town planning concepts. So looking forward to both learning and participating. So thanks.
Great. Nice to meet you, Peter. Alan? I don't know if anyone else, but Alan sounds like Minnie Mouse. Now we're not hearing you, and it doesn't say you're on mute. Maybe Donald Duck would be more appropriate than Minnie Mouse. I'm not sure. We're gonna have to come. It is, it's entertaining, Alan, but we'll come back to you in just a minute. Sorry, buddy.
You might try no video. You might try no video next time. Just doing audio.
Let's hear one more shot, Alan. Nope. All right, sorry, pal. Let's see. Yep, things moved around a little on me. Judy, you're muted. I'll ask. Try to. Yep. Didn't quite get it. Alan, while Judy tries to unmute herself, you want to, I see, log back in?
Yeah, hopefully this is better.
Great.
Yay.
Judy just found her unmute button, so we're going to go to her and then come right back to you, Alan.
No problem.
All right, Judy.
Yes, good morning. My name is Judy Roy, and everybody's giving histories. I came to Scarborough in 1952 at the age of 9. I'm not a true citizen of Scarborough, but have been heavily involved since 1999, and left the council position in 2007 and was invited to stay and become a member of the Long Range Planning Committee. I've served on just about every committee there is, and have enjoyed it and watching it follow a pattern. This recent materials, we've worked it to death, so hopefully it does what we want it to do to keep us moving forward. Yes, that's it.
Great. Thank you, Judy. Alan.
Yes, my name is Alan Paul. I've been a resident since '95. I live in a small subdivision called Prout's Landing, just off Black Point Road. Started with the town services, if you will, in 2004. Joined the planning board. I was chair of that committee for 7 years, served on it for 9. And as part of being on the planning board, I became the planning board liaison, if you will, to CPIC. And as Rick had said earlier, that kind of morphed into this committee, and I've been on that committee since. I also am a member of the SEDCO board of directors and have been on that. I think we determined 3 years or possibly 4 years. I'm not sure now, but certainly enjoy doing that. And as a precursor to what's to come later on the agenda, I would like to officially throw my hat into the ring to be the transportation liaison. So I'll leave it at that.
The gauntlet has been laid. Okay.
The glove is thrown.
But there you go. Hey, Jamel.
Good morning, all. Jamel Torres. I'm the assistant town planner, and I do most of the development review in town. Short and sweet.
Thank you, Jamel. And Karen, last not least, certainly.
Hi, Karen Martin. I'm the director of the Scarborough Economic Development Corporation. So I serve as the town's economic development director. And Jay and I have been working on the comp plan for a long time.
Great, thanks. All right. Very good. So yeah, a good group. Looking forward to it. Continuing our work. So I guess, Dave, I'll turn back to you to spearhead the next one.
Yes, the next item on the agenda is a discussion of the liaison appointment to the Transportation Committee. So I don't know any of the background on this. Karen and or Jay, I guess there's an opening and we need to appoint somebody to that position. So
Yep. So just brief background. Just the makeup of the Transportation Committee does call for there to be a liaison. It's an active committee member, but one of the members is to also serve on the Long Range Planning Committee. Judy has been doing that for the last couple of years anyway. And so her appointment is up on that committee at this time. And so Tody Justice, the town clerk, has informed us that we need to have this discussion. And my understanding is the appointment, whoever the committee sort of puts forward is appointed. I don't believe it needs to go back through council, but Don may know, being on appointments, more succinctly on that, but I believe that's what Tody told me.
Yeah, we just, would do an announcement and then it gets voted. So it's usually a two meeting process. So we mentioned Rachel's joining at a meeting on Wednesday, and then the next meeting that'll just be confirmed with a vote, and we'll do the same thing for the transportation committee of liaison. Thanks.
And I guess the one thing, oh, Alan, I'm sorry, I saw your hand, but just the one thing I want to make mention of, just so folks know what to expect. Typically, the Transportation Committee meets once a month. It's been quite a little while since we've met, admittedly, but when all systems are go, it's once a month, typically a Tuesday evening. But again, that can be discussed. So, Alan, I saw you.
Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I do want to make it perfectly clear that if Judy wants to retain this position, I am totally okay with that. I was merely, I didn't know if she had termed out or if she was looking not to renew. So, but clearly this is her spot if she wants it.
I recommended you.
All right, Judy. Thank you.
Does anybody else have interest? All right, maybe we can cut to the chase, Jay.
Sure. Someone, maybe a motion would be in order.
I so move that Paul be appointed to that committee by this committee.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? No moved. Should we take a vote? Or do we need?
Would you like me to do the roll call, or would you like to do it, Dave?
Go ahead, Jay.
Okay, I'm going to take them in the order I see them. Rachel Hendrickson.
Yes.
Corey Fellows.
Yes.
Marvin Gates. Thumbs up, yes. Rick Schene.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Judy.
Yes.
And Alan.
I will agree. Thank you.
And Don, I'm not sure if as the alternate, are you considered a voting member in Jean Marie's stead?
No, I am not a voting member, no.
Okay. So that's why I passed you over, because I wasn't quite sure. So, all righty. Great.
Second item on the agenda is review comp plan edits.
All right.
Again, we've all had the material. Jay, do you want to give us a little synopsis?
Yep, happy to. So let's see, just quick background. Folks will recall we had a couple of workshops and forums, whatever you'd like to call them, back in October with council, November and December with the public, as well as council had a workshop. We received a host of comments on the draft. We sort of worked through those, and the committee gave staff some direction to start working on a number of elements. So we have begun that work. And so I think what I've tried to do here is sort of position these, sort of really take up three main elements today, and we're still working on others. But looking at the driving successes, which is really sort of the implementation or the action plan part of it. The plan intro, we talked about really trying to codify sort of what does this mean for the 2006 plan? How did that inform this? We've talked about being a foundation, but we haven't really made clear that this plan replaces that plan. So we'll talk about that in a minute. And then Karen's been doing a lot of work on updating the data. As folks know, we started this process back in 2017. Sort of a lot of the data that went into the first draft and had been carried forward was really data that 2017 and soon earlier. Now we're at 2021, so it seemed ripe to refresh that data. So we'll dive into all of that. So maybe the first thing I'll do is jump into the sort of introduction of the driving successes, and maybe would it be helpful if I pulled it up? I know I've sent it to you all. Would it be helpful if I pulled up the Word document?
Yes.
Great.
I'd like to see it.
I will do my best to do that in a meaningful way. Let's see, how am I doing? Let's see.
Got it.
Move the participants over there. Super. Trying to. All right. I look forward to Rachel, and I know she is very good at editing for us. She always finds something good in staff's memos for us to do grammatically. So, but with that,
I have made extensive notes, just so you know, all of them with a red pencil. And for those of you who don't know me, I have a doctorate in English, so I used to teach English. So I do tend to read things with a red pen in my hand.
And I'm certainly happy to. So I think, maybe just, and I sort of said that tongue in cheek, but knowing Rachel did do the work as well, I think that's certainly something that would be helpful for staff to receive. I don't know that as a committee we necessarily need to do sort of grammaticals, but Rachel or anyone else who has them along the way, please send them along. I know sometimes I just try to get the point down and circle back to it. So here, really the intent of trying to rework this is really something that I think came largely out of the town council workshop, largely around just being sort of clear about the roles and expectations. The town council is the sort of ultimate authority, right? They're our elected body. And the long range planning committee serves to make the recommendations, but also really to clarify that there's going to be a lot of work done by the other committees in town as well. I mean, obviously a plan of this size and scope, it's not just going to be up to this committee, but we have a Housing Alliance, Conservation Commission, Transportation Commission. It could go on with all the other committees that are going to need to do some work. So that was really sort of the intent, was to just, I don't know that it really is a shift in what was said, but I think the idea was to really codify or clarify that a bit more. So I'll stop there.
Hey, can I ask one question?
Sure.
Does the second version of this supersede what you've got up on the screen, or do these two work together?
When you say the second version, do you mean this?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So the one we're looking at now is page
150. Yeah.
It's a different. This is the introduction page.
Okay.
This is the page. Yes. This is a separate component than the other document I just pulled up.
Okay. Thank you.
This is really the introduction piece to the driving successes. Go ahead, Don.
Can you hear me okay, Jay?
I can.
Okay, so just a question. I don't recall seeing this document. I recall seeing the edits to the vision statements, but was this in the package that was sent previously? I may not have seen it.
I think it was. I hope it was. If it wasn't, we can certainly circle back to it at a future meeting. Does this look familiar to others? Did I?
I don't recall it.
I don't recall it. Yeah.
Jay, I think you sent that out maybe separately earlier. Is that what happened?
It was attached to your email of the, I can't see the date, but it definitely was in your email.
Yeah.
Okay.
Driving
Thank you. Sorry.
page.
Yep. Yeah, and I know what you, as I said, I know I sent 2 or 3 different emails.
It was in Monday's email.
Yeah, I think it was in the first one.
Yeah.
we could certainly circle back to this at a future meeting if folks, or however you wish to proceed, let me know. I think the next piece is really, to me anyway, sort of the weightier piece of the driving successes changes. But for those who have had a chance to read this, am I generally on track? Sounds like Rick, you had a chance to take a look at it anyway.
Yep.
Jay, I did have a chance to take a look at this. I read fine, although I'd love to hear Rachel's comments, I guess. Just in terms of style, it was a little a lot of 25-cent words is I think what my uncle would have said back in the day. But as an intro piece, I thought it was fine, and obviously I think we're going to focus on the meat of the document going forward.
I don't have a lot of comments. My suggestion is that I can go over this for grammar and copy editing and some stylistic. I did notice a problem with coordination, but that's okay. And then perhaps work with Jay and Karen or whoever you want in terms of just some tweaking. I think it gets a little. Some of the sentences get a little convoluted. I guess that's what I would say. And if the content is appropriate and you folks think that that's the direction that we're going, then just a little bit of editing here and there would make it, I think, a little easier to read.
And Rachel, that's exactly what I was thinking. The content is fine, and I think it's actually what came through from the rest of the document as well. It's just that the way that this is presented is a bit convoluted. I think that's a good word.
And Jay, it might be helpful to say, the intent of adding this piece is a clarification of, the relationship between the 2006 plan and the current plan. So that was the genesis of why this is new here.
Actually, sorry, Karen, that's actually a different piece.
Oh, wait, sorry.
This is the driving successes.
Oh.
That 2006 one's the intro. We'll get to that one. Yeah. Another cup of coffee.
Right, exactly. I should look at what's on screen and not what I have up.
So, hey, Jay, Jay, one question I have on this is that I just, and this ties back to what Rick said earlier, that, the long, he talked about the long range, the comprehensive plan implementation committee, and then that gave rise to the long range plan committee. So it's pretty clear that you had that stated in here, but the new language doesn't really, it takes away the reference to the, the oversight for the implementation of the plan.
Well, I guess maybe, I think the last sentence of the second paragraph is intended to hit on that point where, because I think one of the things I heard coming out of, I think it was the council workshop, was some concern that this language seemed to put the onus of the implementation and the oversight on the long range planning committee and less on the town council, who this committee serves in support of town council. So that was sort of the intent of taking out that middle portion of this second paragraph and adding the last piece that talks about facilitating the partners, and then the long range planning committee at the direction of town council will work as a central committee to guide and coordinate the process. So if that needs a little bit more clarification, we can certainly work on that. But that was, I did not intend to lose that focus, but if I have, then we can work to clarify that.
So anyway, you got the point there. Just a concern that I have is that we just want to know, in the past, it was clear who the who was responsible for developing the implementation plan. Obviously, improving the implementation plan is the town council's responsibility to ensuring that it's being implemented. But it's the revisions, will have to be implemented. The revisions to the plan, correct? So I'm assuming that still remains the domain of the long range planning committee.
Yeah, the other thing I see though is that it also brings in the fact that other committees will take the lead on sections that pertain to what they do. And we had not had that in the last revision. So I think this basically to me clarifies and said, yes, long range planning will be the clearinghouse, if you will. But other committees will be involved in their areas of expertise to really hone those sections so that we can get that good expertise across the town involved. So it's not just the long range planning that's going to be trying to do all of this. So I think that's a good clarification, Don, that from what we had in the last pass.
Right, and just for the benefit quickly of those who are just joining us, that was something that was discussed at the council workshop and in some other discussions that, as is going to be covered later, this plan, the nature of this plan in some ways is fundamentally different from the previous one, where the previous one was more in large part sort of a zoning repair mandate. This one has much more sort of varied goals, and so there seemed to be agreement that there would need to be a little bit more of a kind of a decentralized approach to implementing those different elements. So I think it is good to have it recognized in this section.
I think that makes sense, and that comes through on this introduction. One thing that will set up a comment that I had about the section on the actual articulated visions. We probably need to be more, or the document may wish to be more specific about specific committees' responsibilities for specific line items of action items. And this introduction sets us up to apply some of that responsibility. And that may be something we wish to consider as we look through the vision item. But, I think what you just described, Corey, makes perfect sense in terms of what this introduction sets up.
Quickly, I concur. I agree that I think it hits the nail on the head, and would only add that if Rachel sees it needs to be divided up and have a little more emphasis in a couple sentences, maybe that's the direction. But otherwise, I think the intent's there.
And if I could just circle back to Don's comment. Don, do you feel like maybe it's just really choosing some different words in sort of this last piece where it talks about the long range planning committee working as the central committee that helps to guide and coordinate the process, really sort of firming that up, that it's within the long range planning committee's charge as to make the recommendations? Is that sort of where?
Yeah. I mean, the two things. One is I want to make sure we don't lose the fact that, can you hear me okay? Or should I shut off the video?
We can hear you.
We're good.
Okay. I want to make sure two things. I'm listening very carefully to the comments and also the point that Corey made about how this plan is different. But two things. One is I want to make sure that we don't lose what you've created at the beginning. And you know, Rick, you were there, and you went through, and Judy you went through the evolution from, you know, the implementation committee to long range planning. You know, we like that structure, but we want to make sure we're not diluting that, number one. Number two, there are new things. Even though this plan is higher level, and certain parts of it are higher level and new, it's more visionary. I think, you know, everyone's discussed how this revision is different than the original plan, but it's still is going to require implementation work, number one. And number two, there are going to be new areas potentially. People have called out the, creating a section on climate, creating, some detail on a section on the downs, for example. That'll be new work that would have to be developed and also implemented. So I just want to make sure this language will make sure we're not losing your power, authority, and having an organization that's on point for that. We're going to approve the plan, including the implementation plan, but we want to make sure that we're not diluting the ability of the long-range planners, to guide and direct implementation, coordinated, as Alan Paul has said. So those are my 2 points.
Hi, Jay, it's Marvin. I have the Scarborough Public Draft, the current version that you're editing. And the sentence in the second paragraph that describes the Long Range Planning Committee's charge, when I read through the comprehensive plan originally from beginning to end, I thought that was one of the standout declarative sentences in the entire document. And I would, my opinion is, I don't know what's wrong with that sentence. And obviously I've missed, and I'm attempting to catch up to speed, but if I hear Don correctly, that describes what he's saying. So I would urge you to at least consider not changing that sentence too much. And when I read the new document and the changes, it appears to me as though you're, I don't know how to put it, sort of wanting to say something, but not wanting to be too direct. And I would urge you to think about being more direct. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, because that's exactly what's attempted to be done here. I think based on what I think was said a moment ago, I think this was one of the areas that I heard, and I think the committee heard coming out of council, was they felt it was too directive in terms of what the long range planning role. And so I guess that's the balance we're trying to strike here, is to, so.
Well, as you try to strike that, I would again, for those who are the writers on the group, I would urge those to make the sentence, Peter and Rachel, just as less convoluted and more straightforward, and say it. And those are my 2 cents.
And Jay and Rachel, I've had a lot of experience, at least in the corporate world, of designing these sorts of documents. I think Marvin's got a good point that there's a way to craft that language in that last sentence, which is, if you'll excuse the word, punchy and direct, but at the same time recognizes the fact that our coordination role and our guidance role is not that of quote unquote oversight, which is much more of a town council elected official sort of function. So happy to help on wordsmithing on that one, if that would be helpful.
I think, yeah, I agree that some of this is what I would categorize as bureaucratic jargon, or there are many more words that then are actually necessary to get the point across. I think the work of the when we talk about the long range planning committee, for instance, we talk about that helps guide and coordinate the process. We either facilitate. I think the term facilitate actually handles the concept of guide and coordinate, but we can take a look at simply making it shorter so that it's more accessible to people who are less familiar with bureaucratic language, and just kind of get it down to the what we really mean. And I think we can do that. I think Jay and Karen and I, and anybody else who's willing can do that. One of the things I used to teach was précis writing, which is how to say a lot of things in a small amount of space. And I think we can do that here. I'm willing to try. I've got some notes. So, Jay, if you want to find some time to meet next week, we can do that.
And Jay, I've got some ideas as well. I think maybe the word that resonated for Martin in particular in the original sentence was charge. So we can use that word, our charge is X, but emphasize the fact that it's with the oversight and governance of the town council. And that can compress the sentence a bit, but emphasize the fact that that our charge is to facilitate, with the town council being the ultimate authority, and just compress that a bit. But I'm totally on board for what Rachel's saying. I think she's expressing it well.
Sound good for all? We'll continue to noodle this a little bit. I think what I'm hearing is we're generally in the right direction, but definitely could use a little, not be so convoluted in how we get there. Seeing some nodding heads. Dave, I don't know if you
Good
want
with
to
me.
move to the next piece or.
Yeah, no, it sounds good with me. A little massaging, and yeah, let's move on.
All right.
An intro.
Let's see if I can find the next one here. So this one, the main thing, so there's a couple of things going on here, but really, so this is again, we're still in the driving successes. And so just some quick background. The initial draft of the plan had more of an implementation plan that went along with it, as committee members will remember. As that was talked about, it was actually decided some time ago to pull that out of the plan because it just the way it was crafted didn't really seem to fit very well. And the notion was, all right, once we get the plan in place, then the next step we'll take is really sort of diving into an implementation plan, much like was done, we've talked about a number of times over the last couple of months with the previous plan, the sort of spreadsheet that was done after the plan that really honed in on who's doing what in timeframes. As part of the discussion over the last couple of months, we heard particularly, as I recall it, from both the public and from council, really an interest in seeing there being a little more directive in terms of, okay, we have these next steps, but what do they really mean in terms of time, resources, and sort of what needs to be done? So what staff attempted to do here was to give not a finite who's doing what, i.e. this is going to be the transportation committee's charge and this is the marine resources charge, because really that comes out of council and the committees looking at what their sort of their charge is, but sort of identify what type of action might need to be done at the at the high level, because this, as we've talked about, this plan is really intended to be more high level. Also try to talk in some terms about a general time frame. Again, there's a full recognition that timeframes, priorities of the town change. So any time frame we put together here, in 6 months and 2 years could change. Things that were priority may become long-term, and that's the way documents like this work. And then the other thing is really try to give a sense of costs. And when I talk about costs, I don't just mean dollars. I mean, there's all sorts of costs. There's time, there's committee time, there's staff resources, there's citizen input in time, there's process, and then of course, dollars and cents cost. So, so a lot of plans, not a lot, but some plans might represent this element of a comp plan using dollar signs, but I didn't feel like that was really, that didn't capture it. You see dollar signs, that's all you think of. But to me, there's a lot more that go into cost. So that's why I decided to use asterisks. So I think the first thing I'd like to do is just get a sense of, is this what we were talking about? This was what I got the sense our discussion was around, was really just sort of trying to give, again, a high level couple of thoughts around what it's going to take to implement each of these next steps. So obviously we can talk all about sort of how each one is categorized, but I think I would like to just start by, is this idea of sort of, talking about what type of action needs to occur, the time frames, and the costs. Again, costs, sort of this multi-dimensional thing. Is this what the committee was thinking you were going to see when based on our last discussion?
Well, personally, Jay, I think that it does in fact lend itself to what we were discussing. So, and I also, and it's just my personal feeling that doing much more than this at this time is not really what the plan needs. I think that becomes part of the implementation process itself, to go much deeper than this. But this gives, it gives the town a better idea of what is being thought of as we try to go ahead and implement the plan. Which ones do we think we're going to do first, or try to implement first, and give direction to other committees as to what the intent is. I guess if I had any concern, I thought at the time when I was reading down through these, there may be too many near terms. And some of them might have to become midterms, if you will. So, but I mean, that, as I was going down through them, that was probably the first thought that I had.
I think that's a discussion Karen and I had as well, but we can, thank you. Yeah, we can certainly talk about that as well. Yeah.
Jay, this is Peter. Without having been involved in the prior discussions, I'll look to Alan, I'll look to other folks as in terms of the content and the rest. But it looked perfectly logical. It looked perfectly good. But in terms of presenting this for the town and presenting this to town members, I think what you've set up is ideally suited to have some sort of a tabular format to display the information. Maybe at the beginning, or more likely at the end of the section, so people don't get caught up in the table before they go through the meat of the document. But you've got 3 clear characteristics for each step, which is what an action, a time frame, and a resource consumption. I think you made a great choice in not using dollar signs, but using asterisks or some other mnemonic for presenting it, because you're right, resources are not just dollars. It's a lot of it is time, and a lot of it is resource competition that we're dealing with. So I think that was an inspired choice. But I think to present that in a table is a really powerful tool, and allows, and you can maybe think about that in terms of sorting as well. So each of these within the vision statements has a different element, but there might be some sorting that takes place, that once you see that in a tabular form, that would be helpful in terms of presentation of the content as well. So those were my thoughts coming out of this. But I thought adding these made a huge difference, and thanks for doing it in Word, not PDF.
I was happy to be able to do that because even I was confused as to how to read that PDF. So I apologize for even sending that thing to you guys initially.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the comments from Alan and from Peter, and I including shifting to sort of a more of a tabular format for at a glance readability.
So Corey, if I what I'm sort of imagining, and others as well, of course, but since you just spoke, would be basically taking what we have here, and I think as sort of Peter said, put that in an Excel spreadsheet, whatever the case may be, tabular format, and have that at the back of this driving successes. So sort of leave this format for as you read through it, but then have sort of that one pull out that's easier to see. That's the way I'm envisioning it. Sort of you would have both, so to speak, which is really not a change in approach, but just another way of showing the materials for folks. So
Yeah, I agree. It becomes a little bit more visual and textual, and I think it also.
I agree too, and I think once you do that, you might it might enable you to take a look and see what you've all of a sudden thought that we could get accomplished, whether it's near term or far term. Laying it out that way may cause us as a committee to say, we have too much front loaded. And we need to take a look at how we're thinking about some of these projects. And that may be helpful to us and certainly would be helpful to the readers out there to have them not be distracted by the asterisks or the near term, but really that would help them focus on what it is that we intend to do.
I think it will also help in our dialogue or liaison with other committees in terms of what their lead or what their responsibilities will be in terms of implementation planning. So as a communications tool with those other committees, I think that'll really facilitate what we're trying to explain as the lift that we'll need from them in the coming years.
Jay, I appreciate these fresh comments, I should say, starting, and I think they're all generally good. I'm concerned at some point we're going to go backwards here and be looking at this thing and still not having it done 6 months from now. So I do appreciate the comments and the stylistic changes and the like, but we really need to move this forward to conclusion soon. So
yeah, no, and Rick,
and I don't mean that
here
to be critical of the comments. I just, unfortunately, it's been so long and new faces and new insights, which are all great, but we have to keep our eye on the goal here of getting this finalized in some form soon and getting it off to the council for further consideration.
The other concern that I have in conjunction with what Rick is saying is that while these items are certainly needed, it feels to me like that's an implementation committee activity and not so much needed to be put directly into the plan. Because as we start to, if we put too much of this into the plan, I'm concerned that as time goes on and things change, people will refer back to the plan and said, well, you said this was going to be done by then, or, you had indicated this was your first priorities, and things change within the town and the needs of the town. I mean, maybe a bad example, but just look what COVID did to us. Things happen, and I wouldn't want us to make this so strict by putting too much of implementation into it that we take that power away from the implementation committee, and then it's not cast in concrete in a document that is meant to be exactly how this town is looking to create itself over the next 12 years. That's my concern. And it has been from the beginning that, yes, we need to identify what we hoped and want to be able to do in a general way, not so much a specific way, so that we can morph these items to a process that'll benefit the town as time progresses. And I don't think we know all of that today.
Thanks, Rick. And that was Rick, Alan. That was what I tried to capture in this paragraph, which I see just sort of fades out. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, so we'll have to work on that. But yeah, that was certainly something I think we had talked about before. And so hopefully this, you know, I think that's one of the difficulties with the plan, and because I think some of the comments we've been hearing along is people will say this should be in the plan, and when you look back, it's actually is somewhere else in the plan. But so I hope I captured that sentiment with this piece, which of course I need to figure out why I just faded and stopped typing there, whatever I was trying to say maybe. Anyway, so hopefully captured that general notion.
We're after the framework.
Yep. One of the things I did here, and I certainly come back to others' comments, but so I made reference, someone made reference of maybe we need a midterm. I think at one point, Karen and I had sort of a short term, near term that was like 1 to 4 years, and a midterm that was like year 3 to 7, and a long term that was like year 6 to 10. Try to have these sort of messy overlaps with this full recognition that we don't know. But then as we looked at it, we said, well, is that just too many categories? So I'd be interested in the committee's thought as to, have we refined it too much? Should we add a midterm or whatever you want? You know, we'll come up with some termination, or do we like the
I mean, to Alan's point, my gut feeling is I think that starts to put too fine a point on it. And then you run the risk of having it seem sort of outdated or irrelevant.
Yeah, and I think that's where Karen and I wound up. But I think like whoever said it, and forgive me, I forget who it was, we recognize that it is front loaded with a lot of this near term discussion, because the near term is sort of it's 5 years. So when you look at it, there's a lot of near term. So just that's the pros and the cons of it, is adding another one at least diffuses that optics.
Yeah, Jay, I think referencing the graphic, the table that we did in the implementation committee last time around, I think hit the nail. I mean, it did the right things. It was graphic. Eventually, it became a graphic schedule. But I don't think we need to go that far. We've got the bones of it, the high level outline of it in the document now. Maybe it goes into a matrix as an appendix or something at the end of the chapter. But the implementation committee or the long range planning committee, after this is approved, really takes on that schedule in the graphic and the evolution of that spreadsheet schedule. The more columns, more dates, more information.
Dave, Rachel has a question.
Yeah, I was going in that direction, and to see to suggest that anything to do with the costs and the timing of these should be pulled out as an appendix. Headed by the concept of the next steps, identify a proposed structure of an action plan, and include all of the introductions, Jay, that you had in there explaining what this is. And it then, once something's in an appendix, people understand that that's sort of something that's going to be changed as circumstances require. that it's not the same thing as cast in stone as you might see in the plan itself. That what we would be saying is, here you go, as this is going to be implemented, here's a recommendation in terms of how you can look at what's happening, how you can develop from here into more of a full-fledged implementation plan. In other words, we've done some preliminary work that might be helpful. Here it is, it's in the appendix. Take a look at it. We think this might be helpful for you as you implement.
Okay, I'm going to have to leave, but I can watch the rest of this online, right?
Correct.
Okay, I'll do that. Sorry to have to eat and run, but I've got this other matter. So have a good weekend, everybody.
And it is being recorded, so you can watch it later as well, Rick.
I'll watch the balance of the meeting later today or tonight.
Great.
Take care. Have a nice weekend.
Don, I see. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, I was just going to build on the comments Rachel made. I think that's a great suggestion. You know, part of the difficulty here is that these are new things. They're going to require that certain tasks be performed, but we don't have it fully. It's not fully formed yet. We don't really know, you know, what the steps will be and the timing, but we need enough specificity. And I like what Rachel had to say about, you know, put it in an appendix. We get a starting point. You identify whose responsibility, task, and timeline, and then that will be built out in more detail later. So I think that's a good suggestion, and because I think because of the nature of this revision that we're talking about, this update is so high level. You know, by itself, it's hard to take that in one step and move it into implementation. So that would be my 2 cents. Thank you.
Dave and Jay, it's Marvin. I thought this revision was, for lack of a better way of putting it, terrific. Again, the fire.
Great way of putting it, Marvin.
As a new member, it's difficult to speak up because the firepower on this committee is such, and all I can say to add to that terrific comment is when I first read the comprehensive plan in relationship to joining this committee, I had a very difficult time understanding, you know, I'm talking about the most recent public draft, how the document connected to the zoning ordinance. And as all of you know, and I've learned over the course of the last few years, it is the zoning ordinance where the rubber meets the road. And if something doesn't connect to it, well, it's irrelevant, basically. And in that process, not to bore you senseless, I decided to go back through the comprehensive plan and identify every single time that zoning was mentioned in it. And I found only 40 references, 40 times. And then I dug deeper into that exercise and attempted to lasso what the issue was when in that earlier draft zoning was mentioned. And then I figured those 40 references were pretty darn important. All of that said, and hopefully if that makes some sense, I think you've really captured the connection between, as best as I can tell, between the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance in this section. And I was extremely pleased to see it. And the only other comment I would add to others is keep it simple. There's nothing simple about this section, but as far as adding them, you know, I don't have any crystal ball. I think it's impressive you can do short and long term, and I would keep it that way. Thanks.
I think what I'm hearing out of the discussion so far is, and I think it's not too heavy of a lift, is to really take what we have here in sort of this, take what we have here and just basically take each step, put that in one column of an Excel spreadsheet, and then have columns that follow that talk about tasks, time, costs, and lay out the 3 actions that we've put here. That's what I'm generally hearing. I think there's, I think some might want to go a little further than that. Some think we're good where we're at. So trying to find that middle ground that's what I'm hearing. So that's what I'm envisioning as a next step that staff would take.
And Jay, maybe just to emphasize from my side, I think Rick hit the nail on the head. I think we don't want to add too much, which extends the life of getting this out to the public and out to as a final document. And we also don't want to add more detail or add more constrictions to the categories of what an action is, what the timing is, and what the resources are. I think keeping that as high level as possible and caveating at the top of the document that these are subject to change as you've done is exactly the right way to go.
So I think we have general, and we're just for the benefit of the new folks on the committee, we typically try to stick to about an hour and a half because we realize, some of us, I'm already at work, but others may need to get to work. Certainly if the committee wants to run longer, as I said, I'm already at work and I can do that, but others we know have other responsibilities. So I just sort of say that not to certainly cut off any discussion we're having here. But I guess what I'm just trying to put maybe a little bit of a pin in for right now is it sounds like the format that staff came up with the actions, that the sort of 3 categories we have did what was expected, and we're generally happy with that approach. And if that's the case, I then want to think about, so I guess maybe I should pause there, or I'll keep going. I'm going to assume that's the case and you'll tell me if it's not. The next piece that I think would be helpful, and I don't know how best to do it because, this notion of near term and adding 1 asterisk or 2 asterisks, it's a bit of a guess, anyone's guess, really. I've done my best with it. Karen and I have done our best with it, but I'd be interested to hear if there are any that you think were a major miss as you read it. Have we gotten to that level of detail, or is that an item we should come back to maybe at a future meeting? I sort of look to the committee as to your feelings on that, or are you generally okay with where we're at and we can refine that later? If that and all that made any sense.
Jay, just I think it generally, yes, I think you're in the right direction. I want to take a little time to kind of assimilate it all and get a grasp of it as a whole, with each of these various parts. Again, kind of get a feel for timing, resources in the various categories and how they all fit together. But I think it's a great first pass, and I applaud you and Karen and Jamal for taking this on and getting it out and into our laps so that we can respond.
It may be, as I think about it, again, we talked about if we're okay with this sort of generally taking what we have here, cutting, pasting, putting it into an Excel spreadsheet, maybe staff could do that, send that back out to the committee, and then committee members could individually sort of highlight those areas where you think you're way off here, right? Not, hey, you're at 1 star, it should be 2 stars. I think we, sort of the way offs, and then send those back, and staff can compile those and see, are there areas where the committee feels like we should change? And that way, because I think it's hard to write by committee. It's hard to go through each one of these, here on this. So maybe we can try to throw that tabulation together the next few business days, send that back out, and give you guys a few days to send back to us. And then we can just talk on those few, hopefully it's few, maybe it's all of them, those few where you feel like staff really swung and missed. And then we can focus our energy on a few items rather than all items. Does that sound like a reasonable approach?
And Jay, once we get it in the Excel format, we can do, I think it was Peter who suggested it earlier, do that sort of how many near-term versus long-term versus ongoing, and just give a sense of whether or not, even though something may or should be in the near term, we may have too many items in that category. So we'll add that sort as well.
So Jay, I think the approach is fine. The other thing I feel is that you, Jamal, and Karen have been so deep into this for so long that nobody understands the issues as well as you do. And so I'm sure that your initial pass has been very good. The other thing, I view each of these items as a snapshot in time. And as I stated earlier, because of that, something could come along that's going to press one of these items either further down the schedule or make them become more important to be acted upon now. And those are the things we're never going to know until we're down into it. So because of that, spending a tremendous amount of time on whether it should have 3 stars or 2 is pretty, I don't think it's that relevant. So I'm not saying it's unimportant, but what I'm saying is I don't know how much time we want to focus on a 2 or a 3-star item, because you've given it your best guess at this point. You know, there's 8 or 9 of us here now. We are all going to have differing opinions, and it's probably not going to be worth the argument to determine which one's first and which one is second at this time. Because I think, as I said, it's point in time, and those priorities will change.
Yeah, and I guess that was the same sense I had, Alan, in where I was thinking if we send it out and if all 9 members identify one that staff was wrong on, well, there you go. But
Yeah.
hopefully for the most part, yeah. And again, this is just, our stab, best bet, but so.
And Jay, as the new member, or as one of the 2 new members, I'll say the work is impressive. I know it's the result of months and months of community engagement as well as planning among this committee, and terrific work by the town planning staff. I don't want to imply any criticism of any of that. I think though, when we see this in a table in an Excel spreadsheet, we might get an impression of how it will be viewed by external constituents that we didn't get by seeing it just in text. And that might help in our presentation and how we word things like caveats about timing and the rest. It won't change necessarily any of the priorities, but it will just give us a sense of how it will be digested by the community, and that will be helpful.
If you send it out as an Excel spreadsheet, those of us who understand Excel will be able to do fast sorts and stuff, and that'll help.
And we can
I
always,
took a look at what you've done in areas that I'm familiar with, and nothing really leapt out at me. But having a way to visualize the whole thing would be very helpful.
excellent. We'll work on that. And I just want to pinning off what Alan just said, just for new members and existing members, always, if we send something out electronically and you want a hard copy and you don't want to print it at home, let staff know. Doreen Chris also helps a lot with this committee. We'll take minutes when she's available. So anyway, if you ever want anything printed, don't hesitate to reach out to staff. We can do that for you. So,
and not everybody may have Excel. So
right. Or be comfortable working with it. So if you want to do your hand doodles, hand doodles work for me as well. So we have 2 other pieces we want to try to get to today. They're shorter than this, and I think less beefy. Well, maybe the data isn't shorter, but it's less policy directive. So anyway, do we feel like we've had a full discussion around the driving successes for this morning?
Yep.
Yes. And Jay, I do need to cut out some 9:30, 9:40 or so. So
very good.
Yeah, same here.
Right.
Jay,
All right.
perhaps I-
Jay.
Oh.
Hi, this is Judy. I just wanted to make one comment.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I think, looking at it historically as we go back, because I've been involved in the previous 2 comprehensive plans, so seeing the progression of it. I think we always have to hang on to the fact that it's not written in stone. It is a guide, and we are going to see some bumps in what we've written, but you try to capture as many as you can here. I mean, just Haggis Parkway project in and of itself, it didn't start until 26 years after it was originally intended, based on, you know, factors like the basic income problems of the powers that be. So looking at it, I don't say do it, you know, weekly, but you look at it and you make sure that you're meeting the specs on it. And when we did the zoning, that's why people aren't finding it there. We cleaned up the zoning pretty well during that phase of the 2006, and that's why you didn't see it. So that's my words of wisdom. And quickly just say I've enjoyed, you know, being a counselor and being on various and sundry committees, but my health doesn't permit me to go further. It's very difficult for me to formulate thoughts. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Thanks, Judy.
Jay, I was going to suggest if I could probably address the data update and what's to come next pretty quickly,
Yep.
just to let people know what's happening. So in the first blush that you have here, we did update from 2016 to 2019, really the population and household characteristics based on new data. What we are still working on is the some of the economic data that is coming out. And I wanted to address what our approach to really the data surrounding COVID and its impact on the economy is. You know, I feel like we have to address it to some extent in the plan. And I think what my approach is, we're going to do really a COVID impact page and sort of highlight those things that we know have been affected by COVID and where we need to continue to keep track, because some things we just don't know about. But we wanted to, you know, address the elephant in the room in that data set, but we're just going to separate it from some of the annual data and highlight what we need to continue to follow and where we think there may be some impacts. The same is true in terms of how we want to do some update on the Downs. There was a request to put really a summary of what's happening at the Downs. So we're going to do really an infographic on the Downs, you know, what's planned, what's been built, that type of thing. So those are two pieces that will be a little more separated, but still incorporated into the document, again, as some summary pages.
And Karen, if you don't mind, Karen really did the heavy lift on this piece. I know a couple of the things that were asked to be included, and so Karen, let me know what else I missed, but there was discussion about ensuring that we included about our diversity of the community. So I believe that is new work that Karen has worked on. One of the other things we had heard, sorry for if I'm giving you a headache, bear with me for a moment. I think one of the things, and Karen, tell me if I'm going astray here, I believe this type of information was in the previous plan as well.
It just wasn't addressed in a table like that, so it was easy to look at.
Right.
And then the other piece is from an appendix standpoint. We certainly have a table with all the communities in Cumberland County. Again, there's some data sets that were compiled that were originally intended for an appendix, and I think we can have a data appendix to the plan that lays everything out. It's just that, you know, that fine line of trying to write about trends without being so detailed that we lose people. So, you know, there's a little bit of a gray area there, and we're trying to walk both sides of the line by providing it for people who really want to see it versus really doing some summary work in the text. So we'll have both approaches ready for people.
Yeah, this is Rachel. Karen, when you do the the chart on the generations, we are 5 years into Gen Next or Gen Z. And those people are voting, and they are voters in Scarborough, and they have, that generation has been for 5 years. So if there's any way you can pull in that generation, I think it would be important to do, because those are the young folks that we want to kind of keep in town, their energy and their ability, and, have hope that they become long-term residents here in Scarborough, just not people living in local apartments and commuting to Portland.
Sure. Absolutely. We've got, I've got the Gen Z data. Matter of fact, at the last minute, I cut out a paragraph on that just to make it a little more efficient, but I'll put that back in because it's already done.
Very good.
Don, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to, say thanks to Karen Martin for this piece. I thought it was really quite good, and I think it's going to help inform a lot of the direction and the specific changes we'll be making going forward. So, yeah, and I think that point Rachel made about our diversity in terms of our demographic, is also a key point. I mean, if you kind of look at, we've been doing how that the age profile has been getting grayer, like a lot of the rest of the state of Maine. I think that I think her comments are valid as well. So, but the one offer that I have is that there are a couple of things about the data so what are the implications of what the demographics say? That's something that I think could use a little bit more, more focus. And that's probably the work of the committee rather than, specific edits, additional edits by Karen.
It's pretty clear, though, that the town is aging in terms of.
It is before our eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You and I are driving a lot right now.
So feeling pretty good that we did most of what we talked about with data, which really was about bringing it more recent, which obviously did, talking a bit about the demographic, the surrounding towns and our overall demographics. So sounds like we're feeling pretty good about the work that Karen put into this, and excellent.
Look forward to the next level.
Yep. So the last piece that we're going to try to talk about today was sort of the introduction, and this gets to the discussion we had. Really, again, I think both from the public and from council is really talking about, we talk about in our presentation about the 2006 being the foundation of this plan and how this plan replaces it, but the plan wasn't really clear on that point. So that's what this section, which you can see, this is intended to be added to page 8. So hopefully you're able to sort of see how that works. And just for those who don't know, the comprehensive plan is done in a document called InDesign, which is a little bit tricky to manipulate. So we're trying to we're trying to make it clear where the changes are for folks to be able to see, because you really can't do strike through and underline in InDesign like you can in Word. So we will obviously wind up incorporating this language. So we do realize that at some point you may need to hold the current plan up with this page. And the idea here is to just show you right at the top, this is on page 8, following an existing section. This would be all new language. So hopefully that made sense to you as you looked at it. I understand it's a little clunky, but we're doing our best with it. And I'm sure as we continue to do this over the next couple of weeks, we'll refine our pathway even more so. But that said, how do we do here in capturing the discussion?
Well, you definitely hit upon what the issue that people had in terms of how this plan interrelates with the 2006 plan. And I think that people thought there was this big gap between the two plans. And hopefully this helps to show that that big gap doesn't appear. I mean, I because of my involvement from the beginning, I knew that that wasn't the case, but hopefully for those who have not been as involved as LURPIC has since the beginning of this, then this will hopefully, bridge that gap.
On.
Yeah, I was just going to build on Alan's comment. I like the way this is written, and I think there was a lot of, a fear or trepidation about, well, is this going to mean it replaces the 2006 plan? And your language is quite clear here. It builds on the foundation of the 2006 plan. That said, there is still an, especially as it relates to zoning or whatever other changes might be needed. There may be new zoning, there may be zoning changes that are coming that change what was done originally. So I would want to make sure that is also very clear in this wording. It doesn't mean the work is done and we're never going to touch that stuff. But maybe it's like, maybe it's like we treat the 2006 plan like the Constitution, and the 2021 plans. If there are going to be any changes to the bedrock to zoning, those are viewed like amendments. So anyway, I just offer that, but I think it's really getting a lot closer and reassuring.
Yeah, good point.
As a new member coming in, I thought this was great and actually grounded me quite a bit in terms of how the process worked, and appreciated that language. And I'm sure the community will as well. I really liked the last sentence of the first paragraph, which talked about how the 2021 plan 15 years later is still implementing and is still seeing the results of the 2006 plan. And I thought maybe a sentence, maybe to Don's point at the end of the second paragraph, which emphasizes that this will also have long-term implications that will not be realized immediately and that will continue to ripple, might be a nice emphasis point. But I really like this. I thought that this was a great addition to the document.
Thanks, Peter.
Got one spelling mistake, I think, in there about compressive planning, right? We got that, right?
I did catch that in my second read of it, third read, fourth read.
Yeah, and I think, just on the theme of stylistic things, and I don't think we need to get into editing by committee, but that last sentence in the first paragraph is very good, and it's very important. It's maybe it could be broken up into a couple different sentences. It seems a little bit long. The first time I read it, I had to read it a couple of times to sort of get what it was saying. That's just more of a structural thing. I'm sure it can be tweaked.
Maybe Rachel can help with that.
Right. We'll let the person with the red pencil.
Yeah.
So do we feel like this?
Yeah.
Do we feel like recognizing that we may tweak it a little bit here, but it sort of struck what I think particularly council was looking for. Don, I think, you were one of the ones who's voiced this, really understanding sort of how this plan is different from the 06 plan, hearing your prior comments with maybe just some minor tweaks about, yes, the 2006 zoning is in place, but we still may need to modify that as we go. So, but I'm generally hearing it's striking close to the right chord.
Yeah, I think Peter had offered a good suggestion there, fresh look here in terms of a tweak or two. But I'm reassured by this, and I think it helps to clarify many questions.
Excellent. And then the other thing that we did, you'll see, is so basically this length, there was some of this, page 13 had a few little nuggets on there. A couple of them were very redundant. I guess very redundant is redundant in and of itself. So we're redundant. So really just strip that language right out of the plan. And the pieces that were relevant are really sort of embedded in the foundation of this paragraph. So just taking page 13 out altogether. I know that was, we've been trying to get this to be as thin a document as possible, so people will be encouraged to pick it up and read it while still not losing, obviously, any of the important work. But felt like what was on page 13 could come out at this point with the addition of this paragraph. So hopefully people took a look at that and let me know if we're wrong on that. Otherwise, we're going to move forward with it the way we sent it.
Fine with me.
Yep, looks good.
Thought both page 8 and 13 were improvements.
Thank you. So Dave, we are at 9:30. Do we want to open for public comment and then talk about a next meeting?
Yes, sir. Yes. I don't have the attendance list in front of me.
I have it in front of me. We have 2 folks are attendees. So if either of you would like to speak, could you just raise your hand using that feature at the bottom? And I know both Allison and Rick Meinking have been on plenty of Zoom calls. So I believe if they wanted to speak, they would have raised their hands by now. I'll keep my eyes on it. But I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand at this point for public comment. So with that,
Okay,
yep, sorry, Dave, not to step on your toes. So for
No,
new
not at
committee
all.
members, as you can see, the committee generally works pretty openly. Dave is the chair, but we sort of work together on
Jay knows everything. So I can defer to him usually.
flow. So
Yeah, the last item is confirming our next meeting.
So I had a thought that maybe we might want to get together. So typically our meetings are the first Friday of the month. I know Karen and I are continuing to do updates. So I guess the question was, do we want to try to meet next week, next Friday? I will have to admit that this week I've got pretty absorbed into growth management discussion and haven't worked on the comp plan as much as I thought I would, but at the same time we may, and so I don't know how many materials I'll be able to get out to you early in the week. I'm sure I could work on a few things and I intend to. So, and Karen, I'm not sure where you're at. I know you had a couple of things pop up. I know in there you had already talked about a few of the things you're going to work on. So, and sorry, Karen and I, normally we collaborate a little bit more going into this, but it's been one of those weeks. We're all having them every week, it seems like. So sorry to make excuses, but there you have it.
I'll have some more standalone pieces with the data, the 2 really infographics that I'm working on. I should have those ready by Monday next week, so we can send those out.
And so with that, and we could probably get that Excel, that sort of the driving successes Excel spreadsheet put together pretty quickly. So maybe it does make sense. We could have a short meeting next Friday, because I know, again, as has already been mentioned, really the idea here is to try to push this out to council as soon as we can, right? Council is going to start to have budget creep up on them. Growth management is obviously high on their priority list that they're trying to move forward. So I think coming out of our workshop with council, the idea was to try to push this out. So I guess I'll encourage us to meet next week. It may be a shorter meeting, but the more things we can churn, the closer we are to the end.
You're talking the 29th and not the 5th, right?
I'm talking about the 29th and then probably the 5th and then probably the 12th. I'm thinking we may meet every week for the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of plowing ahead, keep the momentum going and get things finalized.
And if
I'm
we
good
can
with
do
that. My only conflict is the 3rd Friday, so.
We'll be all done by then.
Perfect.
And I think, yeah, if we can make them shorter and more succinct, then I think that makes them more efficient. As we get into the last half hour of an hour and a half meeting, things begin to lose people's attention. So get it hard for an hour. I think that's fine with me. Works good.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. We'll
great point.
Be tactical.
Yeah.
That works with me. The next Fridays I'm available. I'll be very brief, and I know this is a monkey wrench I'm throwing in here, but as a new member, you have to be prepared for a new thought. And this is a new thought, and it's fairly minor. And that is in the history section of this document, which I think is about 5 pages, not long at all. When you're creating a document that's going to be around for a decade or two, I think it's not vital, but I think that history section could use some tweaking. It's read very much like boilerplate to me. And other than those 2 maps with the population growth, which were very interesting. And I am volunteering you, Peter. I read your website and your ability to write, and obviously your interest in history. If nothing more, I'd be very interested, Peter, in having a conversation with you or any of the members about that and whether or not it could be improved. I think it can be. And again, I understand it's minor, basically, but I don't think it's unimportant. And thank you.
Well, Marvin, as a history major, as an undergrad, always interested in that. So we can take that offline, and happy to have a conversation about that. And Jay maybe loop you in, but yeah, that'd be fun.
One thing I'll just make mention of, and pleased to obviously have an enhanced document is always better. But just bearing in mind that our historic preservation committee did do sort of the yeoman's work on that piece. And so it may be worth, and I know those folks are readily available. So I think if there are thoughts for improvements, that's wonderful, as I said, and we can certainly fold those folks in as well. Because I think as we talk about sort of we're the hub, and others have more expertise in certain areas. So
and I may be a person of one voicing that opinion. And of course I understand that, but wanted to throw it out there.
Very good.
Okay. Be happy to look at it. Yeah. Anything else we need to cover, Jay?
I think that about does it. We'll see everyone next Friday, and we'll get something up online as soon as we can, so folks know about it.
We'll look for it.
All right.
All right, great, thanks.
Staff, for
Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Welcome
Thank you.
to our new members.